Okay, that's good. There, we're going. Take two. Good morning. So good to be with you today, this morning. And I'm hoping that this topic serves you today. I don't know of anyone who doesn't suffer some pain in their life because of resentment. So I'm going to talk to you today about how we can release resentment. Hi, Angela. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Resentment really weighs us down. If there's somebody in your life or someone in our life that we're carrying resentments around, it's such an energy suck and drain, right? It's heavy in our hearts. It causes feelings of, irritation. Good morning. Um, it can cause us to feel really closed down and small. We can actually, good morning, Jessica. We can actually start too, if we're having a resentment with someone or we have something with someone, it can even keep us from like living our life fully. Like, I don't know, maybe we don't go to certain parties or we don't go to certain events because we're carrying resentments, and we don't feel, we feel kind of icky and blocked around certain people in our life. So if this is true for you, sometimes I think we can carry resentments against ourselves as well. But today I'm going to talk specifically about how we can release resentments with other people. So before we dive into today's teaching, we'll just take a deep breath in through our nose. Exhale, sigh it out. Good, and then just allow yourself to come home to your breath. You might place your hand on your heart. And just take a moment right now to check in with yourself. This might be the first time you've checked in today, and just sense, how's my heart this morning? What emotions might be moving through me? Am I anxious? Am I happy? Am I excited? Am I content? Am I restless? Am I grateful? What's going on in your heart? You don't need to know why. We get so lost in content and stories sometimes. And actually, if we get too focused on why, then we disconnect from feeling what's here, which is what's wanting to happen. Actually, the heart never wants to be analyzed or fixed. It just wants to be felt. And when we get in the habit of really feeling our heart in whatever place it's in, state it's in, real healing begins to happen. And that's not always easy, especially if we have resistance around what's arising. So really integral to any of this work that we do, that we start with connecting to just what is. And as we connect to what is in the heart, we more fully come into presence. The mind sometimes will tend to settle a bit when we just start to feel into what's true for us. And then you might notice how your mind is, what state your mind is in, whatever preoccupations might be moving through you. Anything the mind might be hooked on or chewing on, just notice that. Just bring awareness to it. You might even name it. Okay, I've been really thinking about my weekend. I notice I'm planning a lot in my mind. I'm rehashing something that happened earlier today or this week that's really bothering me. Just notice that. And again, we don't have to fix or change it. Just bring awareness to it. And as we do, something begins to happen. We begin to unhook from that a little bit. This is the power of mindfulness. And so allowing yourself to stay with your breath as you receive the words, as you receive this teaching and anything here that you're needing to hear to help you become the best version of yourself today and every day, but especially today. So resentment usually, it begins with something happens with somebody that we care about, or maybe someone we don't really care about that much. I don't know. But oftentimes it's with people, in our lives that we have a relationship with, either at work or, at home or at school, and so something happens with someone and we judge it, Let me give you an example. So, I hadn't thought of an example before I started this video, and I usually do that. My dear husband, he's such an amazing man, and I know he doesn't mind me, unpacking these kinds of things around, my relationship with him, especially since, many of you are in relationships and can benefit from these examples, I hope. But, something that I used to resent about my husband was that, this is kind of, benign in some ways, but, this can apply for things that are stickier as well. I have a judgment around him being a collector. So we have this little garage and it's full of his things. It's his, man cave. And so, but, it's got a lot of stuff in it. My husband's not, he has a different way of organizing his space than I do. Notice how I'm talking about this. Because my old narrative was he is disorganized and, he's disorganized and something like, he's, I don't want to say like, I hate the word hoarder because he's not a hoarder. And I think we all have hoarding tendencies actually in some ways, but he's not at all like that, but he definitely likes to collect things. And so it's like this judgment about him being, disorganized or not able to let go of things, and then it would turn into this thing of like me believing that like, oh, he just wants to stay stuck. And so he just keeps everything, So I would have this resentment in particular around this garage because it was just hard to navigate and go in there because of the stuff that was in there, the stuff that's in there. And so when I started to look at this, and so you might pick something in your life, like a resentment that you have, pull upon an actual example of this in your life. And you might notice a place where you have a resentment. And then I want you to get clear on what the judgment is. And it's something like he should be, she should be. He shouldn't, she shouldn't. And you might even write it down if you're able to right now. You can just write that down. For me, it was he should be more organized. He shouldn't keep his space so cluttered and messy, He should learn to let things go, right? He should be better about letting go of things so that we can make more room or space in our lives together. I don't know, sometimes we take our spiritual practice and just turn it sideways and start just using it against others and ourselves, right? This idea that, a clear space and what that offers us, and that's lovely and wonderful, but when you start using that as ammunition against somebody, that ceases to be in alignment with the truth of who you are, which is, essentially you're good and kind, you know what I mean? So, just that's in a little aside, when we judge people for not being as aware or conscious or whatever as we might think we are, that's kind of a red flag, like ding, 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 judgment's here, ego, basically. So first thing you want to do is get the judgment clear. A judgment statement is good. Second thing, if you're tuning in, I see some people are tuning in, you can say hello, good morning, so I know you're here. The second thing you want to do after you write down that judgment is you might start to sense start with one statement, and then notice who it reminds you of. And usually it's mom or dad. Before you do that, you want to state how it makes you feel. So for me, I was feeling resentment, I was feeling anger, I was feeling a little bit hopeless and sad too, since we are married, and holding a belief he's keeping me stuck in some way is not helpful for me, right? It's not a belief that I want to continue to be in my life anymore. That belief just brings me pain and suffering and creates friction in our relationship. So start to sense how it makes you feel. And then after that, you ask yourself, who does it remind you of? Because likely the feelings that it brings up, there's something about it that reminds you of your mom or your dad. right? Something about it reminds you of your mom or your dad. For me, it was definitely, you know, reminding me of both my parents in some ways. And so as you start to do that, you start to get a little deeper because your resentment is highly charged, not because that person is an asshole, but because it's reminding you in some way of something that you haven't maybe looked at from the past. You know, any charged trigger has gold under it, should we be so willing to look, right? And so as you start to see maybe the ways that this person reminds you of somebody, you know, in your life when you were younger that had the same sort of pattern and you would have the same sort of reaction, you start to get more at the root of where this is all coming from. That typically will help to sort of soften, right? The resentment, it sort of takes some of the charge out. So what was from the past gets to be like, oh, right, that was back then and this is now, right? So in that moment, we can choose freedom now, right? Since we know that it's not related necessarily to what happened back then. You know, my husband is nothing like in so many ways my mom or my dad. And then in some ways he is. He does certain things that trigger me, right? Because that's the purpose of relationship, believe it or not. That's not just the purpose, but part of how a relationship can help us to grow is by showing us the places where we're blocked. Not so that we can blame that person and make them wrong, but so that we can start to look back and really own it in ourselves and start to heal, you know, something that was misunderstood or neglected or hurt inside of us a long time ago, or maybe not even that long, but a lot of this stuff, you know, it goes back to you know, being little. And so after you do that, then I brought this card. Everything's always working out for me. This is one of the beliefs that I practice. Everything is always working out for me. If you're a client of mine, you're familiar with these cards. This is part of our belief work. But this is actually medicine for when I get stuck into sort of like, oh, woe is me. Why is this happening, right? Oh, this person is driving me crazy. As if it's an obstacle that shouldn't be there. No, it's there for a reason. Like, turn towards it and then start to sense, how is this serving me? How is this thing I have with this person, the way they are, how does it serve me? You know, how is it actually helping me? So it's just a little pivot, a little shift, and start to like marinate with that. Like, let the answer kind of come forth. You can journal about it if you want. How is it serving me? For me, when I looked at this, I was like, oh, okay. First of all, it's serving me in like starting to see the places where I'm confused. I'm getting, I'm becoming disempowered, as if how he behaves isn't somehow, really keeping me down. It's like, wait a second, that's not something that I want to continue to uphold in my life. No one else is responsible for, my peace or my ease or my well-being. That's my job. And so, part of it was in like, coming back and then to myself in that way. But then another part of this was like, this is the last piece of this process. As you start to notice how it's serving you, you also need to look at how you too are just like that in some parts of your life. Like, this is the last step, and it can be the most challenging if you have a hard time kind of facing yourself. But it's so healing when I had to look and see in all the places in my life where I was holding on to things that I didn't need to hold on to anymore. That was probably the biggest blessing from releasing this particular resentment that I had, was in starting to notice, oh my gosh, I do that too. Like, I do that too. I may not have a garage, but I have areas in my life where I have clutter. I have areas in my life where, and I'm not just talking like stuff, right? Like just clutter in my life, things that I haven't let go of, things, relationships, patterns, behaviors. I had to look at all of that and start to see. And in that way, it was like, wow, he really served to open up something inside of me, to help me illuminate a place in my own, body mind that was clouded over or stuck. And I didn't know how to deal with it, so I was just blaming him. And that just, he's already got stuff around it anyway. You know what I mean? Those of you who do have a hard time letting go of things, you probably already feel bad about it, right? He didn't need me going in and doing that. So it's amazing how this stuff works. So, the proof is like, it's like how it's like, so once I started doing this, so much, shifted. This whole process you can do with any resentment that you have with anyone. It's resentment is a really beautiful opportunity for growth. And should you be willing to take the assignment? And I'm thinking that you are, or you wouldn't be tuning in here. So the other day, he drove me to go pick up some flowers, and we usually ride in my car because it's bigger, and it's newer. But I got in his car, and so he had all this stuff on the passenger seat. And in the past, I would have said something about it, and I would have made a little jab. You should clean out your car. I would have disapproved. But instead, I just let him, put the stuff in the back seat, and I just sat there down, and I just didn't even, I just loved him up. I didn't even, didn't mention it, didn't say anything. It was a non-issue, right? Because it's not my place to judge how he keeps his car. And again, he doesn't need me, scolding him for something that he's probably already gone, oh God, you ever do that when you pick someone up and you don't think you are? He didn't realize he was going to give me a ride anywhere. And you're like, oh shit, I got all this stuff everywhere. Or maybe you just have a nice clean car. But so it's just these little shifts, right? And that goes a long way. What did that do? It saved us from getting in an argument, right? It saved us from disconnection. Like time is limited. I every day that passes, I'm more and more aware of this. And I think especially as we get around midlife, I'm 44, I'm like, wow, time is passing and it's precious, and we don't have time to waste being stuck in this shit, right? So releasing resentments, it's so worth it. Sometimes the resentments are so deep and you freaking can't do it alone. I could never do this work on releasing resentments with my parents on my own. I mean, I need to lean into, and have in the past leaned into, my coaches to help me, work through the things that are a lot stickier. So use this practice as something, to work with like smaller resentments. And then you can use, with the bigger ones, which please do release them, because they're draining you in ways you don't even realize. When we're holding resentments too, we're playing victim. And not to say that we aren't a victim sometimes, like we really are. I kind of get queasy a little bit around this whole spiritual oh no, we're not a victim, but like, it's like, yeah, no, of course we want to be empowered in our life, but there's some things that do happen that are just freaking like we're victimized, and I don't want to. So I hold that term, realize that I'm holding it in a particular way, that in the way that I might be attached to my blame story with somebody, I am giving them a certain amount of power. I'm making them responsible for my feelings. And clearly when you start to see both the ways you are just like that, and the ways how that makes you feel, is related to your primary caregivers or the big people growing up in your life, then you start to take it back, right? You start to get back in the driver's seat of your life, and that's where you want to be. So if you want help with this, if you want support, then I left a link in the Facebook description, but I'll on Instagram as well. Just write me an email, karinanickerson@gmail.com, and let's set up some time to talk. I would love to talk to you about what you're going through and see if I could help you in any way. The first, that's a consult of sorts, and you will receive some direct guidance in just our first session together, which is always complimentary. And don't hesitate to take me up on that. So if you at all feel called or have in the past and just haven't yet. All right. I hope this serves you today. Please do like or share this post if it did. And sending you so much love and many blessings. Please comment and let me know how this goes for you, okay? Namaste.